Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I've always been good with numbers and finances ever since I was young. This skill followed me into adulthood, and when I got married, it was natural for me to take charge of our finances. My husband is brilliant at many things, but he admits that financial planning isn't his strong suit. He prefers to focus on his engineering work while I handle the household finances. We live in a busy residential estate that's basically a magnet for door-to-door salespeople. Most of them are decent folks, just trying to make a living. I've actually gotten some great utility deals through them over the years when their timing aligned with our contract renewal dates. I keep meticulous track of when our contracts end and always make sure to research the best offers available. One autumn afternoon, I was working from home when the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find a young salesperson, probably in his mid-20s, wearing an ill-fitting suit and clutching a tablet. The salesperson immediately asked if the man of the house was there. I felt my eye twitch slightly. In my 15 years of managing our household finances, I'd encountered this type of attitude before, but it still irritated me every time. I told him no, he wasn't there right now. The salesperson then asked when he would be home, mentioning he had some excellent utility deals to discuss. I told him that my husband would be back after 5 p.m. but added that I actually handle all the utility contracts and bills in our household. The salesperson looked at me as if I'd just told him I handle all our household's nuclear physics experiments. He insisted that it would be better to discuss these matters with the man of the house, emphasizing that these were important financial decisions. I sarcastically agreed that they were indeed important financial decisions, which was exactly why I handle them. But I told him he could come back after 5 p.m. to speak with my husband. He scribbled something in his notebook, gave me a condescending smile, and left. I immediately went to my computer and pulled up our utility contracts. Just as I thought, we were due for renewal in 2 weeks. When my husband came home, the salesperson returned right on schedule. I could hear their conversation from the kitchen where I was busy making dinner. The salesperson greeted my husband cheerfully and launched into his pitch about utility contracts and their excellent offers. My husband immediately questioned why he hadn't discussed this with me earlier, explaining that I handle all our utilities. I could practically hear the salesperson's neck squeaking as he backpedaled, stammering to ask if I was available now. My husband told him that I was out running errands but suggested he could come back tomorrow morning to speak with me. The next morning I was ready. I'd spent the previous evening researching offers from various providers, including his company. As luck would have it, they did have the best rates, but I made sure to secure them through their online portal rather than through him. When the doorbell rang at 10 a.m., I answered it with a steaming mug of tea in hand and my sweetest smile. The salesperson asked hopefully if now was a good time to discuss those utility offers. With gleaming satisfaction, I thanked him for reminding me about checking our contracts yesterday and told him that I'd already switched both our gas and electricity to his company the previous night through their website. I made sure to mention how fantastic their online exclusive offer was. His face went through several interesting color changes as he processed what I was saying. I continued sweetly explaining that, as the person who handles all our household finances, I needed to be thorough in researching the best deals, and their website had been very helpful in that regard. I took a satisfied sip of my tea as he stood there, likely calculating the lost commission from 2 utility contracts. He weakly protested that he could have processed that for me yesterday. That's when I delivered my final blow, reminding him how insistent he'd been on speaking with the man of the house about such important financial decisions, and that I wouldn't want to overstep my bounds as just the little woman of the house. The sarcasm was practically dripping onto our welcome mat. He mumbled something about having other appointments and practically sprinted down our driveway. My husband found the whole thing hilarious when I told him about it later, and we've since made it a running joke. Whenever either of us needs to make a decision about anything, we dramatically ask, "Shouldn't we consult the man of the house?" It's become our little inside joke, a reminder that partnerships work best when you respect each other's strengths rather than making assumptions based on gender. I built my business from scratch 15 years ago. Started as a small coffee shop, and through hard work and dedication, it grew into a chain of successful cafes across the city. I always made sure to help my family whenever I could, especially my younger sister who struggled financially. I'd been sending her money monthly for the past decade, helping with her rent and basic needs. Looking back, maybe I enabled her entitled behavior. Everything changed 6 months ago when I started feeling constantly tired and nauseous. At first, I brushed it off as stress from running the business, but when I started having severe back pain, I knew something was wrong. The doctors ran some tests, and the diagnosis hit me like a truck: end-stage kidney disease. I needed a transplant, and I needed it fast. My sister came to visit me at the hospital. I remember how she walked in, acting all concerned and loving. She expressed shock at my condition, saying she couldn't believe this was happening to me. When I told her about needing a transplant soon, she immediately offered to get tested to see if she was a match. I was touched by her offer. For the first time in years, I felt like maybe she did care about me beyond just the monthly checks I sent her. The doctors ran the tests, and surprisingly, she was a perfect match. I felt so relieved, thinking I'd be okay. But then, the day before the scheduled surgery, she came to my hospital room with a folder. She said we needed to talk about something important. When I asked what it was, she started talking about how giving me her kidney was a huge sacrifice. I tried to express my gratitude, but she cut me off. That's when she dropped the bomb. She wanted me to sign over my business to her. I couldn't believe what I was hearing and asked her to repeat herself. She made it crystal clear. She wanted the entire business, and in exchange, she would give me her kidney. If I refused, she said I'd have to find another donor on my own. Shocked, I asked if she was seriously trying to blackmail me while I was dying. She tried to justify it by calling it a fair trade. Her kidney for my business, take it or leave it. My doctor happened to overhear this conversation from outside the room. He came in looking absolutely disgusted and apologized for overhearing, but explained that this was highly unethical and illegal. He emphasized that organ donation cannot involve any financial compensation or coercion. My sister tried to tell him to stay out of our family business, but he stood firm and said he would have to report this and that the transplant couldn't proceed under these circumstances. My sister stormed out, screaming about my ungratefulness and how I'd regret this. The doctor immediately started reaching out to other relatives for potential matches. It took a few weeks, but he finally found my second cousin who lived in another state. She immediately agreed to help, no strings attached. When my sister found out, she came barging into my hospital room again. She tried to guilt-trip me by reminding me that she was my only sister. I confronted her about trying to extort me on my deathbed and being willing to let me die if I didn't give her my business. She tried to defend herself by saying she was just trying to secure her future and that I owed her. I told her she was wrong. I didn't owe her anything and reminded her that I've been supporting her for years. I told her to get out. The transplant was successful. My second cousin turned out to be not just a lifesaver, but also a wonderful person. We've grown quite close since the surgery. As for my sister, I immediately cut off all financial support. She had apparently been living quite lavishly off my monthly payments, never bothering to save or find a stable job. Within months, she lost her apartment and her car. She's couch surfing between her few remaining friends who haven't gotten tired of her yet. She tried to sue me for emotional distress and broken promises, claiming I had verbally agreed to give her my business years ago. The judge threw out the case immediately, and she was ordered to pay my legal fees. Now she's not just homeless, but also in debt. My business is doing better than ever, and I've set up a foundation to help people who need organ transplants but can't afford the associated costs. Sometimes I get messages from my sister through mutual acquaintances demanding I help her get back on her feet. I just forward those messages to my lawyer and go about my day. It's amazing how a near-death experience can show you people's true colors. I lost a sister but gained a wonderful relationship with my second cousin and a new perspective on life. Sometimes family isn't about blood, it's about who shows up for you when you really need them. I come from a family of real estate agents and property managers, so I've always been the go-to person for housing advice. After getting my license at 22 and working in the field for over a decade, I've helped countless clients and family members navigate the complex world of home buying. But sometimes, being the knowledgeable one in the family comes with unexpected headaches. My mother raised me to be financially responsible, and I followed her example. I bought my first house at 25, did all the paperwork myself, and never asked for handouts. This responsible approach to finances has made me somewhat of a black sheep in my extended family, where everyone seems to think money grows on trees, especially if those trees are in someone else's yard. The latest drama started when my uncle, let's call him the first uncle, approached me about buying a house. He asked if I had a minute because he needed advice about buying a house. I told him I'd help, and he explained that his family was finally thinking about getting their own place and wanted to know what the process was like these days. I gave him some basic advice about getting his finances in order, specifically mentioning that he should collect the money he was owed by my other two uncles, the second uncle and third uncle. This wasn't just spare change they owed him, it was an entire down payment. See, a few years back, my first uncle had made what I consider one of the worst financial decisions possible. He gave the second and third uncle money for a down payment on a house they were supposedly going to own together. First uncle and second uncle's families lived there for a while, but first uncle's family eventually moved out because the space was too tight. Here's where it gets ridiculous. After putting down a down payment as a supposed co-owner, first uncle's family was paying rent to live there. I warned him back then that he needed to get everything in writing and make sure he was legally protected. He brushed off my concerns, saying they were family and would definitely pay him back. After first uncle moved out, second and third uncle started renting out the vacant unit. Second uncle basically lives for free, and third uncle got ownership of a house without investing a dime. They promised to pay first uncle back for his down payment, but it's been nearly 5 years of empty promises. So when first uncle called me the other night, I wasn't expecting what came next. He started by asking if I remembered our previous conversation about buying a house. When I confirmed and asked if he had questions about the process, he surprised me by asking if I would be willing to sign on as support for the loan and help with the down payment. I had to ask him to clarify if he was really asking me to co-sign and provide a down payment for his house. He confirmed and explained that he had talked to second and third uncle about getting his money back, but they needed more time and had suggested he ask me for help in the meantime. I spelled it out for him, asking if he was really asking me to co-sign a loan and give him money for a house I had no interest in, instead of getting the money his brothers owed him. When he hesitated and tried to justify it, I refused and ended the call. I hung up after that, but the story doesn't end there. When I visited my mother for Halloween trick-or-treating, I learned the full extent of their audacity. Not only had they asked me to co-sign, but they'd also approached my father to help with a down payment, and by help they meant pay for the entire thing. Turns out first uncle can get a loan, but it's not enough for what they want. They're specifically looking for a two-family home near the city, refusing to consider more affordable options further out. Their master plan: have my father pay the entire down payment, have me co-sign so they can get a more expensive home, rent out one unit to help pay the mortgage, and then, get this, they'll pay my father back when they can. They didn't even offer to direct the rental income to my father. The next day, I sent all three uncles a message suggesting a counter-offer. I proposed that second and third uncle should either sell their shares of the current house to pay back first uncle, or at minimum, second uncle should start paying rent, instead of living free off first uncle's down payment. Their response? Complete silence. 2 weeks later, second uncle's wife started posting on social media about ungrateful family members who don't understand the meaning of helping family. I simply replied to her post with a calculator emoji and the exact amount they owed first uncle, plus 5 years of interest. They blocked me after that, but I hear through my mother that they're now trying to convince my grandmother to take out a home equity loan on her paid off house to help them instead. Good luck with that. She may be sweet, but she's also the one who taught my mother everything she knows about financial responsibility. I'm a 30-year-old single dad, and this involves my ex and our 12-year-old son. Our relationship started back in college. We were young, maybe too young, when she got pregnant. Things were great at first, but everything changed after our son was born. The sleepless nights, the constant stress, and our different approaches to parenting created a rift between us. When our son was just 4 weeks old, we decided to end things. The first year was rough. Since she was breastfeeding, I only had visitation rights. But once our son turned 14 months, we established a proper shared custody arrangement. I worked extra hours and lived frugally to ensure I could provide for my son and save for his future. Every month, without fail, I put money aside in a secure account for him. When our son turned 4, my ex remarried. Soon after, she started having more children with her new husband. They now have 4 kids together, and I've always respected their family dynamic. Our son seemed to adjust well to his new siblings, and I made sure he never felt left out. But recently, everything changed. One of their children was diagnosed with a rare type of cancer. It's been tough on everyone, especially our son. His mom and stepdad started pulling back on activities and expenses, which I understand given their situation. I've been picking up the slack, paying for his activities, ensuring his school lunch account stays full, and making his Christmas extra special this year. The real drama started last week. My ex called me out of the blue demanding to know how much money I had saved for our son. When I told her it was between me and him, she revealed they were pulling all their savings, including the kids' college funds, and needed access to our son's account. I refused. She tried explaining they needed it for medical treatments and insisted it should help all the children. Again, I stood my ground, telling her the money was for our son's future and would stay untouched. She then tried getting our son involved. He came to me upset one evening telling me how his mom kept talking about his savings and that he didn't want to give up anything else. I promised him his money would stay safe and secure. The next day, my ex sent me a detailed breakdown of their medical expenses. I didn't even look at it initially. She called me heartless, saying this was about a sick child. I explained that while I sympathized with their situation, my responsibility was to our son, not her other children. She accused me of being selfish and questioned what kind of person would refuse to help a sick child. I simply responded that I was being a responsible father to my child. That's when things got ugly. She started calling me every name in the book, and I had to end the call. Her husband joined in, sending me threatening messages about how I'd regret my decision. The final straw came yesterday when they showed up at my house unannounced. They brought their sick child thinking it would change my mind. I remained calm and told them they were using emotional manipulation, that my son's future wasn't a backup plan for their family's needs, and warned them I'd call the police if they showed up uninvited again. They left, but not before my ex screamed that I'd burn in hell for this. I immediately documented everything and sent it to my lawyer. We're now in the process of modifying our custody agreement to prevent any future attempts at accessing my son's savings. My son is thankfully sheltered from most of this drama, and I plan to keep it that way. The account remains secure, and I've added extra legal protections to ensure it stays that way, even if something happens to me. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.